this is Kyle, and welcome to another edition of COVID Comfort. Today we are going to be talking about The Shining, the novel, the miniseries, the movie, the myth, the legend, all of it. So first up, we're talking about The Shining, the novel. This was my first time reading this, and I have to confess that I think my exposure to the movie first and foremost has influenced my opinion of the novel. And also, spoiler alert. So, it's different in that the book sympathizes with and is much more from the POV of Jack's character. So, if we don't empathize with the character, we at least understand what's going on with him. And it's kind of totally different from the other depiction, or the most famous depiction, I should say. So we understand a lot more about him. There's a lot more detail into his past, into the family's past, into the hotel's past, into all kinds of things. There's also a different ending with the hotel blowing up from the boiler and Jack kind of fighting against the spirits of the hotel and his own addiction and abuse to blow up the hotel, and Halloran and Wendy and Danny all escape. And then there's an epilogue where they live happily ever after, basically, which is pretty sentimental to me. It's really well written. I don't really have anything against it. I think just having known the movie first, it was a slog to get through this book because I kind of knew what was going to happen. Yes, there are differences and there's more detail and the ending's different, but for the most part, I knew where this was going. So it took me a while to finish this, and it is not my favorite. There's a lot of dialogue that felt kind of like mannered and weird to me, to be honest. But still, I mean, it was really well written. There's a lot of good stuff in it. Just not really for me. So that is the novel. Then we come to the 6-hour TV miniseries from 1997, The Shining. 6 hours. It's like 4.5. 6 hours with commercials, probably when it originally aired. This is interesting because it is definitely more an adaptation of just a straight, very literal adaptation of the novel. And the actors do a good job. I think Steven Weber actually is a good choice for that version of this character. Rebecca De Mornay is good. I don't think anyone else is. They're okay. The kid, Cortland Mead, who I recognize from 90s stuff, and I can't think of anything in particular, but he just has this weird thing going on where he's like a cute kid, but there's something in the way that he talks. I don't know. It's like really annoying and distracting and just feels like schmaltzy. Has this kind of the tone of this whole thing. It kind of just drags along and feels episodic and doesn't feel super well paced, and it feels so constrained, which I'm sure it was because it was made for a major network in the 90s and all that stuff, and there's not a lot they could do, but it just feels that way in every bit of its essence. Just feels like the performances, like everything about it, especially too, like I know they filmed in the Stanley Hotel, which was the inspiration, or one of the, kind of the key inspiration for the book. But it just feels cozy and rustic, and it just doesn't. There's no feeling of that place being creepy. And for a story where place is so important because it's influencing the events that unfold. I feel like that's pretty important, and it just doesn't give you that vibe. And also, I mean, we didn't even talk about the topiary and the hedge animals, which I think it works in a book. It doesn't work in this miniseries at all. It just doesn't work. It's not scary. It's laughable. And so it's okay. And then it has. I thought the ending to the novel was sentimental. This is sentiment times 1,000, with a whole graduation scene and basically a return of the Jedi apparition of Jack wishing his son well on his graduation. Man, come on. Oh my god. Yeah. So that's the miniseries. And then we come to Stanley Kubrick's only horror film, the masterpiece that is The Shining from 1980. I think it's absolutely brilliant. We don't have to talk about the fact that it's a masterpiece, but I will tell you the improvements that I think that it made. So, of course, this isn't really from Jack's point of view. If anything, aside from his encounters with the hotel and the ghosts, or whatever you want to call them, we don't really know what's going on with him, other than that he's obviously, we don't get from his point of view that he's an alcoholic. We understand that he's fighting that addiction, and that something happened with Danny and him, and that he lost a job, and that he's very irritable, and this is not a happy family whatsoever. But we don't hear his inner monologue, and we don't feel for him in that way. But to me, that is the capstone of everything that makes this great, which is mystery and ambiguity. And what's scary is we don't know what's going on inside his head. And we don't know, for example, when Wendy discovers that he has been writing this whole time hundreds of pages that all say all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, which is not in the book, that we discover that with her. Whereas if we were with Jack, we would know, hey, he hasn't. I mean, we kind of see he's not really writing very much, and he's ranting about how he's about on the cusp of something, and then we see him just bouncing a ball, instead of writing. But we don't know we don't know definitively. We discover that with her, just like with her, we discover that he's disabled the snowcat that could get them out of there. Whereas in the novel, we're with him when he is considering using the snowmobile kind of thing to leave and take Danny to the nearest town, and him losing his temper and destroying part of it so that it's no longer functioning. So there's no surprise there, whereas Kubrick skips over that. We don't see Jack doing that at all. Jack says, go check out the snowcat, you got a surprise. So we're with the more vulnerable party in discovering these things, and things getting scarier. And the fact that we don't know exactly what he did, or if the hotel did it, or what's going on, all we know is we're trapped there. That makes for a better story, in my opinion. It ups the stakes. It makes everything more scary. And the film does that time and time again. I mean, we barely get the story of Jack in the book breaking Danny's arm, in the movie dislodging his shoulder. And we all only hear about it from Wendy. I mean, we do hear about it from Jack later when he's talking to the bartender. But first we hear it from Wendy. And just in the way she plays it says everything about their relationship. She's so apologetic. She's so trying to gloss over it. She's so afraid to incriminate him in any way. We get it. You know what I mean? the way that she says that it was an accident, it's just a thing that, we get that it wasn't an accident, and we get her relationship with her husband, and we get it all. We don't need to hear about it again, And that's what film can do so well, is just less is more. And that's everything. I mean, the ending is better, the conflict is better. Dick Halloran dies, which is a character that I love. Also, Scatman Crothers is so fucking good. But everyone, I think everything is improved upon across the board. The location is actually creepy. And also, funnily enough, to me, say what you want about Nicholson, but everyone else in this, their performances, in contrast to the miniseries 17 years later, the performances are across the board more natural and better in every way. I mean, I could go on and on. And the ending is completely, the whole movie, completely unsentimental and so much more interesting for its mystery of suggesting, was he always part of the hotel? Has the hotel absorbed him now into its history? There's so many possibilities, and we're left with just a bunch of questions and a photograph that he's now in. I mean, it's fucking great. I think it's one of the best endings ever. And it's just, rewatching it was so enjoyable in contrast to the other two. No offense. And it just made me realize I could rewatch this tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Besides just the entertainment value, there's just that much to enjoy and examine, and it's that well crafted. So, sorry, Stephen King, but the Stanley Kubrick movie is, to me, the best version of The Shining, hands down. And it's also the thing I saw first. So, maybe I'm extremely biased, but that's my take on all three Shining versions, let's say. So yeah, Kubrick wins. And I guess that's it for this episode. See you next time, next month. Stay safe. One of these days, the plague will be over. Adios.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Produced by Josh Lee, Craig Draheim, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Editing by Kyle Hintz.